And there is plenty in our portfolio that help you with that. It's an interesting. You use the word detachment, and it's a word. There's a Sanskrit word for it also, but I don't now remember it. But it's a word that gets used quite a bit in different traditional spirituality, and it's something that with this particular issue that you're working with, there is of course just being aware of stuff, just being aware of whatever you're going through. That's number one. If I was, you know, the categorically we have two kinds of meditations. One is shamatha meditation, another one is vipassana meditation. And these are Buddhist terms. So one is calming down, abiding in calmness, roughly speaking, and the other one is analytical meditation. And there are different takes about what this calm abiding or shamatha, what it is, depending what kind of method we are talking about. And roughly speaking, there are two types of methods which are mindfulness based and awareness based. And mindfulness based means that you use focus, concentration, and concentration practice to calm yourself down. And one of the things that comes with calming down is detachment. So, whatever stuff you have in your mind, when you focus on one thing and stay focused for however long it is, assuming that you can do it very well, it will calm down the system, and the stuff that are poking you in the face, figuratively speaking, that stuff will loosen. So there is a detachment. And of course, nothing wrong with this, nothing wrong with mindfulness practices, but awareness based method like ours, it's a bit different. So well, a little bit different, let's put it this way, because we don't really do concentration practices like in mindfulness methods. We don't really do that kind of sustained concentration. So like always, punch through, punch a hole in your energy body, recognize basic awareness that is there, and then bring that awareness into whatever you are experiencing or working with, and that will do it. Whether one sitting or 50 sittings, that will do it. Detachment, attachment. And of course it varies, and here what is really golden is, I wish I could speak on behalf of all awareness methods, like all awareness methods, but it is also true that methods vary. Like, what I mean by that is that even when different awareness methods, namely like Tibetan Mahamudra or Dzogchen, they have the same view like we do. We practice according to this awareness view, but techniques vary. So something that is techniques within methods vary a lot. And as you know, this is something that I've spoken a lot for many years, as long as I've been teaching. And what is really golden is that what is extremely valuable with the whole path of wisdom and clarity teachings that work with ignorance, turning ignorance into wisdom, turning avidya into vidya, apragya into pragya, is that when we have tools that can clarify our mind very effectively, this will help us immensely when working with stuff in our lives, whatever it is. Because it is common sense that if we have a murky mind, drowsy mind, mind that gets easily distracted into things, then we won't be able to work through our whatever it is so effectively. On the other hand, when our mind is clear, then, it becomes much easier. This is an obvious point, isn't it? But when we speak of clarity of mind, I was just thinking about this when I made a YouTube a couple of days ago on Baba's Secret channel. So these words like clarity and kindness and love, compassion, peacefulness, they get thrown, how do you say in English, like thrown out a lot. They are used a lot in spiritual teachings. But here again, the immensely precious point of practices that work well, because just because you talk about clarity and kindness and love, it doesn't directly translate into an experience. So when speaking of something really basic to Buddha Dharma, like clarity, selflessness, emptiness, you could say mental sobriety, as you know, there is actually large, vast scope to that clarity. And the point that I'm trying to make or coming to is that it is immensely precious to have the tools that allow you to tap into the full scope of that clarity, full scope of that kindness, basic goodness, full scope of that peacefulness. Even a little bit of clarity is better than not having clarity at all, obviously. Same thing with the rest of the qualities. But, well, if I speak in traditional kind of lofty terms, methods like ours exist to enable people like each one of us to pursue the path to Buddhahood, to full enlightenment that we hope to attain in this life. And this is nothing unusual, what I just said, because this idea of attaining Buddhahood, somebody in this life, it's a very common Mahayana and Mantrayana idea, a very common goal, maybe you could say goal. But even if we didn't speak in such like a dharmic, Buddhist, Oriental terms, if we just think about this from the perspective of being humans, clarity versus messiness, sobriety versus chaotic head, kindness versus being rude, arrogant, selfish, jealous, being loving, naturally loving and soft versus being anxious, fearful, hateful, being naturally peaceful versus being chaotic, the internal space being messy. Everybody can understand that this is something that speaks to us very easily, speaks to people, because this selfless clarity and love and kindness, compassion, happiness, joyfulness, playfulness, peacefulness, these are all something that all people can appreciate and that all people are looking for. So even if we forget about lofty fancy terms like attaining Buddhahood or Sambodhi or Svarupa Samadhi or Sahaja Samadhi, such yogic terms, there is so much depth to us, to our true being, to our true self. So much depth in that clarity, kindness, love, ease. So much depth to our true being. And then, to repeat what I've been trying to say for years, kind of drumming my drum for years, is to point out to, in the world of spirituality, meditation, dharma, about this full scope of these things, full scope of all these qualities that I have already repeated several times. So not just settle with little bit of clarity through awakening, not settle with few crumbs of these inherent pure qualities or characteristics, but to reveal full scope of it, full scope of who we truly are. And then living from this discovery, living. Whatever we are engaged in life, we all have jobs, all have various responsibilities to our spouses, to our families, children, and so on and so on. So tapping into this nature of ours fully and then living from it. And this is, I find it fascinating, is maybe not the word, but I find it interesting, because when we look at the traditional enlightenment teachings of Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and so on, they create one kind of picture of enlightened masters or sages and saints, one kind of image. And even, we are lay people, I don't have any monastic students. At one point I had, but now I don't have any more. But we are all lay people, and not and specifically modern Western lay people. So we have modern Western lay lives with the stuff that modern Western lay people have in our lives. And, if we look at the history of history of tantric yoga and tantric masters, who many were lay people like us, were married, had families, some had jobs. You know, the how do you say, the what is the word, the dynamic of their lives was quite different probably than our lives. Their lifestyles were quite different. So in Asia, you have very, like recently also, I have a picture here in the main practice room in the ashram of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Dilgo Khyentse, very, very famous Tibetan Buddhist master who passed away in 1990, I think. And he was the head of the Nyingma school that Guru Rinpoche founded about 1,000 years ago. And Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, for example, he had a family. And I was just reminded when I started thinking of examples from recent history. We were just talking with Rani when she was here, like last week or the week before, and she mentioned that Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche had, I think, 2 daughters, 2 children, but they didn't even know that this man was their father. Up until some point, I don't know when, but it wasn't apparent to them for however long in their life that this man was their father. And I'm using this just as an example that the dynamic, the lifestyle, I don't have the correct word for what I'm trying to describe, but the lifestyles of Asian lay masters, whether they were female or male, looks very different even in recent history than how it looks in our modern lives, in the modern West. Isn't that interesting? So we, in terms of practice, we are recognizing and revealing and establishing the same Buddha nature as Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Guru Rinpoche. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche 50 years ago and Guru Rinpoche 1,000 years ago and Buddha Shakyamuni 2,500 years ago and Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago, but everything around it is quite different. Very sometimes you can say same methods, but in our case, in the case of open heart, we need to say similar method, because I have to say similar, not same, because our method is technically quite different from Tibetan Vajrayana teachings, for example, but more or less the same practices, aiming at fully revealing this basic nature of ours, but our lives around it are very different. We have smartphones and we drive cars and we go to grocery stores and we do things that never existed before. Drive, travel with airplanes so easily to other places in the world. We have satsangs in Zoom. This didn't happen, never happened before. Ever thought of that? So, I find it kind of fascinating, interesting. Sometimes I find it not exciting or not inspiring at all, figuring out how to navigate this cultural, the Western culture, basically. Often I have felt that bloody hell, I would just prefer to live in Asia where I didn't have many of the problems that I have, specifically as a teacher in the West. Anyway, but it is interesting. And I find it also lovely that we have so effective practices in our method. I just did I have to check the numbers now. Just a sec. I just updated my statistics about so people who have finished the path of wisdom and clarity, have realized emptiness of all phenomena, perfection of 10 bhumis. The number at the moment is 27. 27. And those who have perfected the path of healing and light, have perfected subtle body, also known as astral body, altogether 9. And then there is also Bodhi, who I guess you could say that he's in the process of perfecting his physical body. But it's an opening process. But this statistic is amazing. Amazing statistic. So what I mean to say is that we will find, us Westerners, we will find and create our own yogic, meditative culture of awakening. In our Sangha, in all other Sanghas, we will find it and make our own. And this has happened in the history of Buddhism, all kinds of religions, when some teaching has gone to new areas, new countries. It has taken usually a couple of 100 years for example, when Indian Buddhism, when the teaching was brought from India to Tibet, it took a couple of 100 years of translating texts and coming up with art forms that better suit the Tibetans and Tibetan culture. So this has happened many times in history, and now also little by little in the West. But the priority always, obviously, is that the priority is that we need to have a method that will reveal ourselves as fully aware, fully awake beings. So that needs to come first. And when, well, as a side mention, if this is not done and accomplished in systems that are and have and are being brought from Asia to West, if this is not done, this, should I say, Westernification, is that a word? Changing some Asian things into practices that better suit Western culture. If this is not done, this will make these rigid practices, rigid traditions irrelevant to Westerners. And we are already seeing this in the West, that Westerners, like what happened in the history of Dharma is that with lots of support and with lots of money and a lot of political influence, they made whole nations. Buddhists, well, Buddhism is a good example. So there was lots of, how to say, energy and power supporting this mission of the Dharma. It's quite different this time from Asia to West. There is money, but well, we don't have money in our mission, but there is little money that is supported, that supports this purpose, but not that much of political power. Like you don't have the King of England, King Charles. You don't see him giving speech that okay, now we will make UK Buddhist, and we will hire 50 translators who translate texts into English, and carpenters who build temples, and architects and painters and sculptors and so on. So it's quite different. But if we want, and I think that many traditions and teachers out there should think about this, that if they want their traditions to take root in wherever they might be active in the West, they need to start making it Western language, form, expression, rather than keeping the Asian forms and ways. And this is, of course, what, well, I guess with open heart it's a bit different. I'm still contemplating these matters of how to make open heart more accessible and approachable to Western people, because it could be there could be much less Asian terms, concepts, and so on. But the reason why we went back to using the name open heart was exactly because of this, rather than keep the name Amrita Mandala. So it's also a work in progress in our case. But definitely we need enlightened beings in the world, perhaps more than ever. Perhaps more than ever we need enlightened beings in the world. People who can show others what their true nature is, who live, who, how to say, who abide or non-abide in their nature. We need such people. So how about it? Will you show it to others? I don't know how many of you are listening, because most of you are eyes closed. You're perhaps getting so bored you're already having a nice sleep. Do you have any questions about what I just said? Does it make sense? Does some not make sense? Do you think some of it is total nonsense? Now again, I started noticing some of you went like you were so happily in meditation just a moment ago, and then when I asked a question, you started rolling your eyes like this. What should I ask? What should I ask? Yeah, go ahead.
Of course, it makes sense. What I seem to understand is that there is no idea of this process in the West at all.
Right, yeah.
So for some people, it's just like you would come and tell a fairy tale, as opposed to Asia.
But it's also more and more of a fairy tale in Asia. Well, it's there. Like people are Buddhists and Hindus there, and having saints and sages and siddhas is still like, let's say, roughly on the map. But the numbers of Buddhists in Asia are in decline, in steep decline, has been for decades. But yes, it is this fact that like meditative cultivation or cultivation of awakening, that this idea doesn't exist in Western culture. That's how do you tackle that? How do you fix that? Well, there is so much, you know. I've been making these YouTubes lately, and because I'm making them, I have to contemplate all kinds of things, what I'm gonna do next, and so on. And there are very famous figures, spiritual teachers, guides, awakened people like Eckhart Tolle, for example. Like I don't know how many millions books he sold. How many people saw him in Oprah, or seeing Thich Nhat Hanh in Oprah, or there's maybe at least 35 million people who have met Ammachi, the hugging saint, in person. So this kind of span didn't exist before. So there's little bit, but where I want world spirituality to go. Did you hear what I said? Where I want world spirituality to go is having a Dharma center, maybe not in every city block, but in every other at least, where they have solid, understandable, approachable awakening teachings that, if people want, leads to full enlightenment. Well, okay, if we had one such center in all the big cities of the world, I don't know how many big cities that have over 1 million inhabitants there are in the world. There must be hundreds of such cities, but that's not a bad dream, isn't it? Is it? But something like that, something proper not just something aspirational or inspirational, but something actual. Not just a band-aid on a scratch, but real teachings. Anything else in mind before I also take a nap?
Vajrayana Buddhism is spreading. I live in a place called Crestone, Colorado, and there are uh, 4 or 5 Buddhist centers here that are quite active for retreat. Um, what I find interesting about what you're doing compared to the traditional Vajrayana is that you're you're not getting the Siddha Vajrayana, you're getting the monk Vajrayana, a lot of chanting and so forth. I was wondering if you could speak to that just a little bit because really there's a book by Keith Dowman that is written about all the Siddhas. And when I read that, I go, oh, yeah, that's it. And even though I enjoy the monk Vajrayana, I enjoy the Siddha Vajrayana very much more so, which to me seems to fit more in the West because guys like Talopa, he worked grinding sesame seed and also did his practice. Could you speak to that just a little bit, possibly?
Of course, of course. This is something that I somewhat regularly actually speak about. That it's tantric path is a much better fit to Western lay people than the monastic renunciative paths are. I'm not a historian or a scholar, but what little I have read about the history of tantric systems is that, well, when we speak of Vajrayana, we often automatically associate it with Tibet. The origins of that are in India, but the teachings were taken to Tibet, and a number of things happened in India that pretty much, how do you say, eradicated Buddhism in India. And because what happened in Tibet is that there has been this fights, conflicts in inside Tibet for hundreds and hundreds of years, and one of those conflicts was between the monastic institution and lay practice. But then what happened over time, I don't remember the specifics of this, but what happened was that these tantric practices were taken part of monastic system, and of course lay people, lay practitioners still exist, and especially in Nyingma school, Guru Rinpoche school, but in Tibet there was this big monastic machine. And I don't know any exact numbers of of this, but I don't see that many monasteries or monastics, monks or nuns in the West. There are some monasteries, Buddhist monasteries, Hindu monasteries, maybe even Taoist ones. I'm not sure about that. But it doesn't seem like that monastic side is kind of taking, how do you say, is taking, do you say taking fire, getting popular, getting that much support in the West? And I don't really, my own opinion about this, whether there should be a monastic system in the West. I'm not for or against, but I'm a layman myself, and that's why, obviously the whole Western culture, already what we have from Christianity is that, well, in Catholic countries, you have monasteries, you have celibate priests, and so on. But for example, in big areas of the Christian world, there is no monasticism. Like in the whole Lutheran Protestant side of things. Well, I don't know if I can say Protestant, but I'm from Finland, for example, and there are no Lutheran monasteries at all in my native culture. So the point that I'm coming to is that we don't, can I say on behalf of all Westerners, probably not, but I'm not sure if we have this idea of monastic life, monasticism in our culture, from Christianity. And therefore, I think I'm not sure if monastic Buddhism will either speak to Westerners. Anyway, just a few of my casual random thoughts about that. But this whole Siddha style, it's a perfect match for Westerners because we don't need to get rid of our lovers, spouses, families, homes, cars, jobs, anything. We don't need to get rid of our televisions, of our enjoyments in life. We don't need to get rid of any of it. The opposite. We can bring all of these experiences that we have in our lay life, we can bring awareness to these situations and circumstances. That's like a perfect alignment. Perfect alignment. And here I would say, I said a couple of words about mindfulness paradigm and awareness paradigm. And the thing about mindfulness paradigm is that you are to concentrate on what you do. Concentrating, and through that way developing this unification samadhi. But the awareness paradigm is quite different when it comes to, watching the television with your family or having a dinner or being at work. You can just be natural. As long as you recognize this basic awareness, Buddha nature and its qualities, you don't need to be specifically concentrated to do that, but you won't either be distracted. So I think that because of this, it's a perfect match for our Western lifestyles. And I agree what you said, David, that it's suitable for the Western world. something that is really important is how Dharma practice, spiritual practice, is relevant for people of our time. How it is relevant, or how it becomes irrelevant. And the relevance, of course, if we have to be, like I already said, if the form of the practice doesn't seamlessly match our Western lives, then I think it's questionable if it will stick. But also, equally important point is that I have seen little bit of constructive criticism, but I have seen so many people coming from Vajrayana methods writing me and studying with me who got discouraged or even disillusioned, because even when there is this teaching of emptiness and realization of emptiness, a realization of basic goodness, the practices don't deliver. So this is also a big concern, that if the methods are like that irrelevant, it will not take root in the West. So and like what I already said is that it's my dream that I hopefully have a few more decades left. And it is my dream that before I pass away at some point, that I will have had 100 students who have attained full enlightenment. So that at least in 100 big cities of million inhabitants, there is this Dharma center where real teachings are taught by professionals. You have a beautiful home, David. I was admiring the ceiling of your house there. Beautiful wooden ceiling. Okay, I also want to take a nap. So let's practice together. Together with all beings, with all life. A really beautiful basic teaching in Dharma is that all beings have the same Buddha nature. And from the perspective of this Buddha nature, we are already together with all beings, share the same life. Especially this time of year, it is early summer. We can so easily get inspired by nature because there is this so much freshness, kind of new life. So beautiful, this fresh green, such a beautiful, vibrant aliveness. And this same vibrant aliveness is in us, in every cell of our bodies, in our hearts, in our heads, in our gut. Relaxing all unnecessary tensions, releasing all unnecessary holding, grasping, and just letting this basic nature of ours hold the body. Together with all beings. Enjoying this basic ease. Joyful, subtly blissful, and firmly embodied. together with all beings in the most genuine way. Really being open to others. And that makes our three bodies, one physical, two energetic, open up, stretch out, stretch open. This is the gift of bodhicitta. Reveals our nature in the three bodies. And it's a natural response too. When we think of others, people of the world, in the world, and their state of mind, their condition, it ignites something in us. It makes our system open up. And this is the way how our own basic nature becomes revealed and recognized. It's beautiful, this teaching of bodhicitta. It is complete, total. Profound. So may all beings enjoy. May all beings enjoy peace. May all beings discover peace that is within them. That is their nature. Peace and love and clarity. May all beings receive these gifts that are already in them, inherently. May all beings enjoy. May all beings be held, loved, listened, heard. So much love. So much love. Sober love. Grounded love. True love. May all beings get a taste. May all beings get their bellies full. Stay with it, stay with the charge, the transmission, and let's lie down for a moment. You can find Avalokiteshvara mantra in the chat window, Amrita Mani mantra. So let's chant it together. Even if you haven't received an empowerment for this mantra, it's okay to chant it. And let's chant in a relaxed, comfortable way, with putting love into it, thus making it meaningful for the liberation and happiness of all beings. Chanting the mantra with our whole being. Okay, you can join me when you get the rhythm. Abahu Om Amrita Mani Pe Me Hung Hri 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 Abahu Om Amrita Amrita Mani Be Me Ungri Abao Om 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 Amrita Mani Be Me Ungri. Now relax. Stay with it. Let's lie down again.
I vow to liberate all sentient beings. I vow to end all self-based confusion. I vow to exercise the Dharma that frees. I vow to attain the great compassion. I vow to liberate all sentient beings. I vow to end all self-based confusion. I vow to exercise the Dharma that frees. I vow to attain the great compassion. I vow to liberate all sentient beings. I vow to end all self-based confusion. I vow to exercise the Dharma that frees. I vow to attain the great compassion. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his... Sorry. Let's start over. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure Land. I am the Buddha. I am the Dharma. I am the Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure May all beings attain the body of light. May all beings attain the body of light. May all beings attain the body of light. May all beings receive my accumulated merit. I dedicate the merit to the refuge and to all sentient beings. Thank you, Amrita Baba. Thank you, Amrita. Avalokiteshvara. Let's put our hands together and bow.
All right, folks. In a week from now on Saturday, I will give Empowerment of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal. It is open for everybody to join. And then in 2 weeks from now, I will travel to UK. There will be a weekend retreat. It will be both in Birmingham in person as well as through Zoom weekend retreat. So June weekend retreat will take place in 2 weeks from now, from Friday evening through Saturday to Sunday. And then the last satsang of this training season will be held in 3 weeks' time on Sunday. And I will be in Finland then. So the time for that satsang, I think it's Sunday 14th, maybe Sunday 13th or 14th. The time is different than usual. It will be 9:30 in the morning, local time, Finnish time. 9:30 in the morning. And then, other than those trainings coming the next few weeks, there will be the summer retreat in mid-July. Any questions before we wrap it up? Anything in mind? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And see you in the next one.
Thank you, Baba. Good night.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.